In this video, you will meet some of the most important people in human history. In this essay, we will highlight 10 figures in history and talk a little about their trajectories, people who shaped our perspectives and influenced the way we relate and understand the world. Marie Curie lived from 1867 to 1934, was a significant figure in history. Marie Curie, a scientist from Poland, achieved an unprecedented feat by becoming the first woman to receive the Nobel Prize in Physics. Moreover, she received this recognition twice. Her childhood was marked by poverty, and in order to pursue her studies, she had to leave her homeland and settle in France, overcoming the barriers and lack of opportunities that women faced in the scientific field. She excelled as the top student in her class during her master's degree, and in partnership with her husband, Pierre Curie, she developed the foundations of radioactivity. Unfortunately, at the age of 67, she passed away due to the adverse effects of prolonged exposure to radiation, resulting from her dedication to studies and experiments. Ada Lovelace lived from 1815 to 1852. Ada Augusta King, born as Ada Byron, accomplished the feat of being the first woman to create a programming language. Since childhood, her mother encouraged her to study mathematics and introduced her to the King of England. Through the royal circle of friends, she met Charles Babbage, an important mathematician of the time who was developing an analytical machine similar to a giant calculator when she was 17 years old. Despite marrying at a young age and being a mother of 3 children, Ada continued to study mathematics and languages. She had the opportunity to create an algorithm that, 100 years later, was recognized as the first programming language in history, named Ada. This language is still used today to operate banks, computers, and trains. Louis Pasteur lived from 1822 to 1895. This scientist from France grew up in a military family, graduated in literature, but fortunately followed the path of science and chemistry, revolutionizing medicine. Without him, our hygiene would likely be much lower, and people would still die from common diseases like the flu. Pasteur was responsible for discovering that germs are the cause of many infectious diseases. Until then, hygiene practices were poorly developed, and people had more contact with bacteria. The idea of boiling something for disinfection, for example, was his invention. If Pasteur had not proven that microorganisms present in the air infected substances, we would not have developed cleaning and sterilization methods that are essential in our daily lives. Martin Luther King Jr. lived from 1929 to 1968. Born into a family of Baptist preachers, the American leader and civil rights activist discovered at an early age that he wanted to follow in the footsteps of his father and grandfather, becoming a pastor at a young age. He lived in Montgomery, Alabama, a region in the southern United States that faced serious issues of racial segregation. After the famous incident in which Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat to a white man on a bus, Martin stepped in and became the leading voice of the movement that organized the Montgomery bus boycott. He became a nationally recognized figure in the fight against racism. His nonviolent approach, inspired by Gandhi, continues to be an example of conduct to this day, especially since the leader was assassinated while advocating for peace and justice. Rosalind Franklin lived from 1920 to 1958. If today thousands of medical procedures can be performed through the analysis of deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA, it is largely thanks to this British scientist who contributed to the discovery of its molecular structures. From a very young age, at 11 years old, she was already teaching chemistry and physics to her peers at school. She received annual awards for her academic performance. Despite opposition from her father, who wanted her to become a social worker, Rosalind graduated in chemistry from the University of Cambridge. In 1951, she joined the team of biophysics. Albert Einstein lived from 1879 to 1955. Since childhood, he was an ordinary boy with an interest in mathematics, physics, and music. Born in Germany, He was influenced by the men in his family to take an interest in engineering. His favorite book on science was Critique of Pure Reason by Immanuel Kant. At the age of only 26, Einstein worked as a patent examiner and published articles that made the year 1905 the miracle year, as it is called in the scientific community. From that point on, Einstein became a recognized genius for his discoveries, such as the photoelectric effect, the existence of atoms, the famous equation E equals sine mc2, and the special theory of relativity. Karl Marx lived from 1818 to 1883. Born in Germany into a middle-class family, the thinker and socialist revolutionary Karl Marx created a new way of doing politics that had a significant impact on the course of history in the 20th century. Although his father was a lawyer, Marx always had an interest in philosophy and obtained his doctorate in that area at the age of 23. However, his opposition to the dictatorial regime of Prussia left him on the fringes of society throughout his life. Marx was the author of the Communist Manifesto, 1848, and Capital, 1867, two political Bibles that gave rise to communism. These works influenced leaders in the pursuit of power that opposed the prevailing capitalist system. Marxist ideas were responsible for the geopolitical division of the world in the 20th century, culminating in the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991. To this day, words derived from his ideas such as communism, class struggle, materialism, syndicalism, right and left, are often mentioned by people. Rosa Parks lived from 1913 to 2005. Rosa Louise Macaulay Parks was a person who fought against racism and for civil rights in the United States. When she was young, Rosa had to stop studying to work as a seamstress and help her family. She was married to Raymond Parks, who was part of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP. Rosa's life changed in December 1955. At that moment, she refused to give up her seat to a white man on a bus, causing much outrage in the city. This marked the beginning of the fight for the rights of African Americans, an important moment in the country's history. From that moment on, Rosa dedicated her life to the fight against racism and became an internationally recognized symbol. Margaret Hamilton, born in 1936. You know that day when humans reached the moon? That would not have happened if it weren't for the contribution of Margaret Hamilton. She was a software engineer from the United States who led the department responsible for the guidance of Apollo, the mission that took the first astronauts to the moon. Since childhood, Margaret was very curious and intelligent. She studied mathematics and quickly became an important figure at NASA. She led the department responsible for writing the command codes for one of the agency's most crucial missions. Gautama Buddha lived from 563 before Common Era to -483 before Common Era. Born as a prince in Nepal, Buddha, as he is known in Brazil, renounced his throne with the goal of eliminating suffering for all beings, including us humans. His journey in search of the state of nirvana inspired a large number of followers and gave rise to a religion. According to accounts from some biographies, Buddha attained enlightenment at the age of 35 and understood the origin of suffering and how to eradicate it. Over the next 45 years, he traveled through different regions of India and China, teaching his doctrines. Today, Buddhism is one of the most popular spiritual practices worldwide.